Let's find a well." I made an exasperated gesture. It is absurd looking for a well at random in the vastness of the desert. But even so, we started walking. When we had walked for several hours in silence, night fell and stars began to appear. I noticed them as in a dream, being somewhat feverish on account of my thirst. The little prince's words danced in my memory. "So you're thirsty too?" I asked. But he didn't answer my question. He merely said to me, "Water can also be good for the heart." I didn't understand his answer, but I said nothing. I knew by this time that it was no use questioning him. He was tired. He sat down. I sat down next to him. And after a silence, he spoke again. "The stars are beautiful because of a flower you don't see." I answered, "Yes, of course." And without speaking another word, I stared at the ridges of sand in the moonlight. "The desert is beautiful," the little prince added. And it was true. I've always loved the desert. You sit down on a sand dune, you see nothing, you hear nothing. And yet something shines, something sings in that silence. "What makes the desert beautiful," the little prince said, "is that it hides a well somewhere." I was surprised by suddenly understanding that mysterious radiance of the sands. When I was a little boy, I lived in an old house, and there was a legend that a treasure was buried in it somewhere. Of course, no one was ever able to find the treasure. Perhaps no one even searched. But it cast a spell over that whole house. My house hid a secret in the depths of its heart. "Yes," I said to the little prince. "Whether it's a house or the stars or the desert, what makes them beautiful is invisible." "I'm glad," he said. "You agree with my fox." As the little prince was falling asleep, I picked him up in my arms and started walking again. I was moved. It was as if I was carrying a fragile treasure. It actually seemed to me there was nothing more fragile on earth. By the light of the moon, I gazed at that pale forehead, those closed eyes, those locks of hair trembling in the wind, and I said to myself, "What I'm looking at is only a shell. What's most important is invisible." As his lips parted in a half-smile, I said to myself again, "What moves me so deeply about this sleeping little prince is his loyalty to a flower. The image of a rose shining within him, like the flame within a lamp, even when he's asleep." And I realized he was even more fragile than I had thought. Lamps must be protected. A gust of wind can blow them out. And walking on like that, I found the well at daybreak. Chapter 25. The little prince said, "People start out in express trains, but they no longer know what they're looking for. Then they get all excited and rush around in circles." And he added, "It's not worth the trouble." The well we had come to was not at all like the wells of the Sahara. The wells of the Sahara are no more than holes dug in the sand. This one looked more like a village well. But there was no village here, and I thought I was dreaming. "It's strange," I said to the little prince. "Everything is ready, the pulley, the bucket, and the rope." He laughed, grasped the rope, and set the pulley working. And the pulley groaned the way an old weather vane groans when the wind has been asleep a long time. "Hear that?" said the little prince. We've awakened this well, and it's singing." I didn't want him to tire himself out. "Let me do that," I said to him. "It's too heavy for you." Slowly I hoisted the bucket to the edge of the well. I set it down with great care. The song of the pulley continued in my ears, and I saw the sun glisten on the still trembling water. "I'm thirsty for that water," said the little prince. "Let me drink some." And I understood what he'd been looking for. I raised the bucket to his lips. He drank, eyes closed. It was as sweet as a feast. That water was more than merely a drink. It was born of our walk beneath the stars, of the song of the pulley, of the effort of my arms. It did the heart good, like a present. When I was a little boy, the Christmas tree lights, the music of midnight mass, the tenderness of people's smiles, made up in the same way the whole radiance of the Christmas present I received. "People where you live," the little prince said, "grow 5,000 roses in one garden, yet they don't find what they're looking for." "They don't find it," I answered. "And yet what they're looking for could be found in a single rose, or a little water." "Of course," I answered. And the little prince added, "But eyes are blind. You have to look with the heart." I had drunk the water. I could breathe easy now. The sand at daybreak is honey-coloured, and that colour was making me happy too. Why then did I also feel so sad? "You must keep your promise," said the little prince, sitting up again beside me. "What promise?" "You know, a muzzle for my sheep. I'm responsible for this flower." I took my drawings out of my pocket. The little prince glanced at them and laughed as he said, "Your baobabs look more like cabbages." Oh! I had been so proud of the baobabs. "Your fox, his ears, look more like horns, and they're too long," and he laughed again. "You're being unfair, my little prince," I said. "I never knew how to draw anything but boas from the inside and boas from the outside." "Oh, that'll be all right," he said. "Children understand." So then I drew a muzzle, and with a heavy heart I handed it to him. "You've made plans I don't know about." But he didn't answer. He said, "You know, I fall to earth. Tomorrow will be the first anniversary." Then, after a silence, he continued, "I landed very near here," and he blushed. And once again, without understanding why, I felt a strange grief. However, a question occurred to me. "Then it wasn't by accident that on the morning I met you 8 days ago, you were walking that way, all alone, 1,000 miles from any inhabited region. Were you returning to the place where you fell to earth?" The little prince blushed again, and I added hesitantly, "Perhaps on account of the anniversary?" The little prince blushed once more. He never answered questions, but when someone blushes, doesn't that mean yes? "Ah," I said to the little prince. "I'm afraid." But he answered, "You must get to work now. You must get back to your engine. I'll wait here. Come back tomorrow night." But I wasn't reassured. I remembered the fox. You risk tears if you let yourself be tamed. Chapter 26. Beside the well there was a ruin, An old stone wall. When I came back from my work the next evening, I caught sight of my little prince from a distance. He was sitting on top of the wall, legs dangling, and I heard him talking. "Don't you remember?" he was saying. "This isn't exactly the place." Another voice must have answered him then, for he replied, "Oh yes, it's the right day, but this isn't the place." I continued walking toward the wall. I still could neither see nor hear anyone, yet the prince answered again. "Of course. You'll see where my tracks begin on the sand. Just wait for me there. I'll be there tonight." I was 20 yards from the wall and still saw no one. Then the little prince said, after a silence, "Your poison is good? You're sure it won't make me suffer long?" I stopped short, my heart pounding, but I still didn't understand. "Now go away," the little prince said. "I want to get down from here." Then I looked down toward the foot of the wall and gave a great start. There, coiled in front of the little prince, was one of those yellow snakes that can kill you in 30 seconds. As I dug into my pocket for my revolver, I stepped back. But at the noise I made, the snake flowed over the sand like a trickling fountain, and, without even hurrying, slipped away between the stones with a faint metallic sound. I reached the wall just in time to catch my little prince in my arms, his face white as snow. "What's going on here? You're talking to snakes now?" I had loosened the yellow scarf he always wore. I had moistened his temples and made him drink some water. And now I didn't dare ask him anything more. He gazed at me with a serious expression and put his arms round my neck. I felt his heart beating like a dying bird's when it's been shot. He said to me, "I'm glad you found what was the matter with your engine. Now you'll be able to fly again." "How did you know?" I was just coming to tell him that I had been successful beyond all hope. He didn't answer my question. All he said was, "I'm leaving today too." And then, sadly, "It's much further. It's much more difficult." I realized that something extraordinary was happening. I was holding him in my arms like a little child, yet it seemed to me that he was dropping headlong into an abyss, and I could do nothing to hold him back. His expression was very serious now, lost and remote. "I have your sheep, and I have the crate for it, and the muzzle." And he smiled sadly. I waited a long time. I could feel that he was reviving a little. "Little fellow, you were frightened." Of course he was frightened. But he laughed a little. "I'll be much more frightened tonight." Once again I felt chilled by the sense of something irreparable. And I realized I couldn't bear the thought of never hearing that laugh again. For me, it was like a spring of fresh water in the desert. "Little fellow, I want to hear you laugh again." But he said to me, "Tonight it'll be a year. My star will be just above the place where I fell last year." Little fellow, it's a bad dream, isn't it? All this conversation with the snake and the meeting place and the star. But he didn't answer my question. All he said was, "The important thing is what can't be seen." Of course. It's the same as for the flower. If you love a flower that lives on a star, then it's good at night to look up at the sky. All the stars are blossoming. Of course. It's the same for the water. The water you gave me to drink was like me.